Hello there and welcome to the Effective Marketing Content Extravaganza. And if you are new here, you won't yet know that I'm on a mission to give you everything you need to be successful in your business, providing, of course, what you need to be successful in your business is to know more about and be implementing more effectively sales and marketing, which is, of course, what you need if you're going to be successful in your business. So what goes on here is I'm giving you everything I know about sales and marketing as part of my What the Series. We look at the marketing news every couple of weeks and speculate wildly about what it might mean for you in your marketing life. I review the very best and the very worst of marketing content on the internet, and whenever I can, I pull in whoever I can to speak to you about their experience of sales and marketing, all to ensure that you are as successful as you deserve to be in your business. So if that sounds like it might be interesting or useful, now would be a good time to like, share, comment, subscribe, do all of those good things. Get involved because that will give us the motivation to continue on this epic journey. Today is Talk Marketing, so we have a guest for you. And today's guest claims to have fallen in love with sales in her childhood. She now has 30 years sales experience, including working as a business development manager in a stainless steel Stockholders, an account executive at Yell. All the best people have sold advertising. Since then, she has held a number of head of sales and sales directorship roles. She has also been a judge for the National Business Women's Awards. She is currently a Clubhouse moderator for the Fab Four and Friends show, an ambassador for the Willen Hospice, a professional speaker and author, and head of retail and chief inspiration officer at Live It, Love It, Sell It. As if that hasn't kept her busy enough, she also won an investment from Peter Jones on Dragon's Den on the telly. Today's guest was introduced to us by the wonderful Gillian Whitney. Today's guest is Jules White. Good afternoon, Jules.
Hello. How are you doing?
I am extraordinarily well, thank you. How are you doing? I'm glad you've got to a situation where you're happy with the way you look in this little venture.
Don't give away all our secrets. It took me 1 minute to set up.
There are no secrets. It took 24 minutes. Now everybody knows the truth. So I hope this isn't the sort of salesperson you are. Are you the sort of salesperson who tells fibs?
Not at all. Never. Not in a million years.
Good. All right. So to warm up, we'll talk about the extra bit. I just watched the clips. You got 75 grand out of Peter Jones on Dragon's Den, didn't you?
Yes. Yes, I did. I can't lie, you see. Yes, I did. It's
yes,
true.
You did. Okay, so I've seen the clips. So it always struck me that would be something that I would like to have had a go at, because I think that's like it's obviously not the ultimate pitch, but it is a really precise, specific kind of pitch that I'd kind of like to have a go at. So how did that come about, and how did it end up? Why are you not working for Peter Jones off of Dragon's Den now?
Yeah, or maybe why isn't he working for me, you could say, as I was pitching my business to him. But I think one of the things that's really important before I tell you how it came about is that what you watched in a clip, which was potentially, if it was the big one, 14 minutes, roughly.
2 minutes and 7 seconds, the one I watched.
Okay. I was in front of them for 2.5 hours. So I always tell people this because they cut television beautifully for you to see all of the bad bits and all of the bits that weren't quite the way that you see them happening. So just so you're aware, I was actually in front of them for 2.5 hours. How it came about was that I was literally, I just had my son, Sam. He was 3 months old. And I'd started this business up because I didn't want to go back to doing the normal corporate stuff. And I wanted to do something to do with babies and mums. That was really important to me because I was loving being a mum. So I started a party plan business because back in 2005, that's what we did. We went to parties and bought stuff and chatted and swapped stories. So I started this business that I knew would be successful because mums wanted to meet up again. They wanted to feel like they weren't just someone's mum, and they wanted to have great quality baby products and touch and feel and try before you buy. So it was a great success as a model. Then I saw an application request for contenders for Dragon's Den, and literally on the internet it popped up. So I filled it in, chuckled away, thought nothing of it. And 2 hours later, the BBC were on the phone. And 2 weeks later, I was in front pitching my business to the Dragons. So it's very quick.
Okay, and that was early doors, was it, for Dragon's Den, 2005?
Yeah, it was series 2. So I think we're just
Wow.
starting. Is it series 19 or 20? I think they're just starting now. That's on the television currently. So yeah, I mean the great thing is it's still on the telly, so people can actually see what it's all about. And the other thing is my dragon, who obviously was Peter Jones, who I shook hands with. He's still a dragon. It's debatable he
Yes.
might need to retire soon, but he is still on the panel, the original dragon.
I lost interest a long time ago, I'll be very honest with you. I mean, it was amazing for 3 or 4 years, like all of these things, but I think everyone kind of got to. I mean, there's something really rather grotesque about these billionaires sitting there with their piles of money and having people beg. Not you, obviously, you put together a masterful pitch and you won, but having people trade their hopes and dreams for, the chance of getting some investment. And the thing that started to frustrate me is nobody realized the actual benefit of it is not getting some money out of these people. It's like the exposure. You're on the BBC where there's no advertising for 10 or 12 minutes. Do you know what I mean? That is the opportunity. And nobody ever seemed to get that. That's why I got bored of it, I think.
No, and I think it changed as well, Martin, because when I watched the very first series, it was it was fascinating in that it was actually quite real in terms of the businesses, the way they were pitching, and the harshness of the dragons, if you like. They didn't actually
Yes.
invest in much in those first few series. They didn't at all. So if you got investment, you did actually rise above. There was something special about you getting investment. Maybe won an episode, perhaps got investment. It was really
Yes.
rare. Now, when you watch it, not only do you get several who get investment, but actually then dragons are all in it together, and it's all become incredibly commercial and TV. Compared to how it used to be. And it's interesting you say about the exposure. When I applied to Dragon's Den, hand on heart, because I'm an honest salesperson, I
I
would say
believe you.
to you, it was just because I was so passionate about what I was doing. I was excited about it and I wanted to tell the world. It was literally
Yes.
that naive. And so my business had only been going, 2 months when I actually stood in front of the dragons. I had nothing history wise to show them, nothing. But I had a vision and I had a story. And that was actually why I believe they invested in me. I truly think that's the case. And I don't think you see that so much now because of the way they're scrutinizing the people who actually go in there. They're looking for where can we trip them up? Where can we get the exciting stories? Oh, there's another investor. Oh, somebody else has to take a share. And all that started to crop up, I think, for the TV bit.
Yeah, and then I think the investors started thinking that they were famous, that they were interesting, funny, entertaining,
Yeah.
whatever. Do you know what I mean? They're really not.
Untouchable. Untouchable. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually appalls me now when I see British television, the standard of it's just parlor games all the time. Do you know what I mean? It's just not. Oh my God,
Yeah.
let's not go down that road. Let's talk about sales because you didn't fall in love with sales when you were a child. No one's in love with sales. Nobody likes sales, is the truth. This is the
Yeah.
truth. So, what on earth is going on with you and this story that you're telling the world?
Well, it's my truth, really, because when I talk about falling in love with sales as a child, my dad ran the local newsagents on the precinct of shops. Now I'm of that age where we went to the precinct of shops, to the greengrocer, the baker, the butcher, and the newsagents, and we bought our stuff. We didn't go to the big Tesco or the big Sainsbury's. And it was a lovely, lovely community atmosphere. So when I was a child, I'd watch my dad serving his customers, knowing all their names, having stuff on the counter ready for them when they came in the front door, repeat business because they came back because everybody knew John and everybody loved John. And John would say, did you see this? This is new. This has just come out. You might like this, because he knew them.
Yes.
And so only as an adult did I realize that actually that's what I loved about what I experienced as a child. So when I came to do sales as an adult, all of a sudden I thought, well, actually, I know how to do this. You can't train me this stuff because I used to watch Dad, so I know what he does. I know what he did then. And so that formed the whole foundation of everything I did in my whole sales career. So I'll tell you how many training courses I must have gone on was probably in three figures eventually, you know, because over 30 years you did all sorts of stuff to help you how to sell. None of that helped me, if I'm really honest, because all it was about was this foundation of what I'd watched my dad do.
Fantastic.
Human life skills, Martin.
Excellent. Good. I'm excited to have this conversation with you because do you know what? I mean, I've been thinking about it because, like, looking forward to speaking to you. I also love sales. I really, really love sales. We'll have the conversation. What you don't know is because you don't play by the rules, and I'm supposed to give you a tiny little brief before we start, but you didn't even want it, is that there is some order to this thing, okay? So there are 5 questions, okay? Question number 1 is, how are you qualified to talk to us about your specialist subject? Is your specialist subject sales, or is it more specific than that? Is it...
You're asking me that question, yeah?
I'm asking you that question now, yes.
I would say sales is my specialist subject, but I think sales is actually a much wider thing than perhaps people realise, because we call it sales. Yes, sorry.
Okay, good. So question number 1, how are you qualified to talk to us about sales? Question number 2, who do you work with? How do you add value to their lives? The third question is, what is your recommendation for anyone who wants to get better at sales? The fourth question is, what should people read? And then the fifth question is, who can you throw under the bus, like Gillian threw you under the bus, who might endure or maybe even enjoy to have a conversation like this with me? So those are the 5 questions.
I love your style.
This is the first time you're hearing these questions. Do you want a minute to digest? Are you ready to tell us how you're qualified?
No, let's go. So first question is the one, what makes me qualified? Okay, so yes. I don't have a string of certificates and degrees and all of those kind of things. I've done a few bits in my time, but nothing significant to sales. But what I have done is, as you said at the beginning, 30 plus years of selling. Now, in the capacity of selling, I've done telesales, I've done field sales, I've done sales management, I've done sales director positions. So then looking at the big picture strategy stuff. So I'm really lucky to have experienced all the different roles in sales. But on top of that, then I've worked in many industries and sectors. So I've done the business to business, business to consumer, stainless steel, yellow pages, exhibition stands, SaaS products, digital marketing, hospitality. I've worked in a venue. I sold baby products. So I think that breadth of just me living my life selling is what I believe qualifies me to be able to not be an expert. I'm not necessarily sure I like that word particularly. I think it's a bit overused, but I would be able to share that experience and what I've learned with other people. And ultimately, that's what I love doing.
Okay. Well, Malcolm Gladwell says if you've done 10,000 hours of something, then you're an expert. And 10,000 hours is only about 8 years full time. So I think you're an expert. I think it is overused. I think people who've got no clue what they're talking about use it. But in your case, I think it's warranted. Like if you've really done this for 30 years, I'm quite happy to tell you you're an expert. And what I'm also happy to tell you, do you want some more good news?
Oh, I always want good news, Martin.
Okay, so the good news is I think you're eminently qualified. That might be the shortest statement of qualification I've ever heard, but I think you're eminently qualified to talk to us about sales. So that's good because we can move on, because there's issues around sales that we need to address. And I've been thinking about this. Everybody hates sales. Everybody hates doing it. Everybody hates having it done to them. Everybody hates sales. But you love sales and I love sales. I had an amazing career because of sales, amazing. And I mean, just to put that in focus, between leaving school and graduating from university, I dug the roads. We had a contract cleaning out storm drains, so I know how different it could be. In my sales career, I went to Cricket World Cups. I took my clients to Cricket World Cups. I took my clients out playing golf. I traveled. I've been all over the world because I sell. Do you know what I mean? And it blows my mind that sales is such a derided way to make money. It frazzles my mind. It really does. Why do you think? I've got a really strong theory, but I'm interested to hear why you think that it might be the case.
What, that people hate sales?
People hate sales, yeah. And they hate being sold to.
Yeah. Well, I think it's mainly because it's done very badly. It's probably the first thing that's come into my mind. And I think that stems from us training people very badly on how we should sell. And I think there's this whole journey of this. It is over a long period of time where when I learned to sell, Martin, you didn't have the internet. Okay. So nobody could Google anything in those days. So a salesperson could walk in, they could say, Mr. Martin, we are number one in the world at selling whatever it is that you're currently wanting to buy. And I would be very friendly and I would be personable. And of course, that's the bit I believe in sales. And I'd make a relationship, but he could never look up to see whether I really was number one. He could never really research the product like he can now. So ultimately what happened is we entered a world of, if I can say bullshit sales, I quite like to put it that way, where everybody believed everything we said. And so actually people did buy on the back of what the salesperson said. Now, let's talk about today. We suddenly now, and it's been over a period of time now, actually, we have the internet, we can research things. Guess what? The buyer's smart. And when the buyer becomes smart, the salesperson should become smarter. And that's not doing it the way we trained them to do it back in the 80s. That's doing it in a very different way. It has to be buyer-led. It has to be us using our life skills that we've had since we were born to create a relationship, listening, understanding, asking great questions, entering the world of the buyer. And I don't mean dip your toe, I mean immerse yourself in their world so you can understand what they think, not what you want to sell them. And it's this lovely place of curiosity. That's sales. That's why I love it. We don't train that. Name me one trainer and one training course that's a big global training course that teaches you to use your life skills to sell and not a process. That's why people hate it.
Yeah, well, I do teach that. I absolutely not. I've got this brilliant presentation, even though I say it myself. I only delivered it twice, but it's called I'm in the Mood for Selling. And basically, that was the message. You've all been selling all your lives. If you've ever convinced anyone to do anything for you, then that was a pitch. That was a successful pitch. It was fantastic. I had them all up dancing to the Nolan sisters at the end of this little presentation. I'll send you a link. What was the thing about that? I think the reason people hate sales, like, because this goes to depth, because I was the Larry kid at school that was always not looking for attention, but getting attention and getting thrown out of the classroom and all of that stuff. Now, if someone had taken me aside and said, you know what, these skills that you've got, if you could tone it down now, that would help us all out. It's going to be really useful to you when you go on and have a career in sales. Do you know what I mean? No one ever said that. And I still don't think they do say that. So I don't know what percentage of the population sell, but it's significant enough, I think, for there to be some sales, like even if they were to call it, I don't know, business acumen or something going on, so that those Larry kids had somewhere to go in school to prepare them for this career in sales. Because the other thing that we're not talking about is the fact that if you don't have sales, you don't have a business. So this is the other thing that frazzles my mind, is that the salespeople in any business are also the most derided, but they're paying everyone else's salaries. If they're not doing it, then nobody gets paid. There is no business. So this whole thing about sales really does my head in. And you're the first person I've spoken to who thinks about it the way that I think about it, I think. This might be a really boring conversation where we just agree with each other all the time.
Yeah, but it's good. And I think that's the problem. I think what's happened is we've said, oh no, but sales is done like this. And that's safe because actually it's proven to be successful. Because it has. Because if you follow the process that's actually been trained and you do it, there will be people who will buy from you, Martin. That's just a fact. But how many more people will buy from you if you use what we're talking about and you think about your people skills and your personality and your communication skills and who you are and who they are, and bring all of those lovely things together? And guess what? It might take a bit longer. It might take you longer to build a relationship, and that wouldn't suit the targets, and that wouldn't suit the guys who are beating the drum at the top of the organization saying sell more, call more, sell more, call more. And that's my experience of sales all my life, where it was all about targets and it was all about revenue. And actually, the smart people know that it's not about that, but the targets and revenue come if you do it the
Yes,
other way around.
100%. And I agree with you about the safe thing, because I think that too many salespeople play safe. But because, like, sales in the way that I think you're talking about it, I expect you to be talking about it, you're actually selling yourself. It's your personality that you put on the time. It's your time and attention that you put on the line that you make available. So the idea that you might get rejected then is, I don't think people are even thinking about it like that. But people hate this idea of rejection. Do you know what I mean? So what they do is they never quite put themselves in the game, so they never quite get rejected. But of course, then what happens is they never quite sell anything. So I think what people are really scared of is failing at sales. And then what happens is they go through the motions and they just fail quicker, and then they go, I don't know, maybe empty storm drains again. I don't know.
But defines failure. That's the problem, you see. Again, maybe it's the way we structure what's failing in sales and actually what's rejection in sales. Because you could say to somebody and have a conversation with somebody who wants what you've got, and then eventually you don't hear back from them. Maybe they ghost you. Maybe they go away and say, well, actually, it's not the right time. But depending on how you had that first interaction with them, depends on whether in 2 years' time, when they do need you again, that they remember you and come back to you. And
Yes.
all of these things are relevant in sales. And for me, I think the biggest problem in sales is actually the big bosses who run the sales teams, because I think they just don't get it. I think they don't get the opportunities that they have. And I'll tell you a quick story if I can, Martin. I worked at a venue, and I worked there when I lost my business. So we didn't talk about that necessarily, but I lost Truly Madly Baby, the Dragon's Den business. The TEDx talk tells you why. So you can go and have a look at that if you'd like to. But I lost that business and I had to get a job. Okay. So I got a job in this venue as a national sales manager. I went 10 years backwards doing stuff I'd done 10 years prior. My pride was in the gutter. I had a £1.5 million target for the first year, which was all the dross accounts that nobody had ever been able to sell to. I smashed it. I smashed it because of what we're now talking about on this podcast. They then said to me, because we had a sales and marketing director who was not so good. So I'm politely saying he was not so good. And he would say to us when we were missing our target of 6 million by £2 million, which is a big miss, he would come out of his office and say, we'd say, what do we want to do, boss? What do you want us to do? He'd say, sell more. Go back in his office and shut the door. They got rid of him and they promoted me to head of sales, above all the people who'd been there much longer than me, who knew much more about the product. And I sat with them all and I said to them, guys, I need your help. Because ultimately I couldn't storm in and start saying, sell more, bring more people, blah, blah, blah. I need your help. We had 14 people in our team. Who have we got here? Why do you do what you do? Why do you love selling this venue? And why do our customers buy it? And every month for 18 months, Martin, we didn't talk about target and we didn't talk about revenue. It was on the board. It was there. They could see it. But we talked about people. That's what we did. And in 18 months, we smashed the target by £180,000. Now, that's a true story. And for me, it proves everything about this methodology of not doing the whole process scripting, rushing a customer into into buying something. This doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work anymore. So why not think about how we can make better relationships that last much longer for people who not only then become your marketing team, because they'll recommend you, but they'll come back and buy from you again and again for the rest of your life.
100%. And there is something about this because unfortunately, you can't detach sales from the rest of the business. And there is something about the way businesses go about setting targets that is completely stupid. It's always completely... The first job I was in, they would sit down, they would look at what happened last year, and they would add 15%. That was the target. That's the most sensible targeting I saw in my entire career. The rest of the time, they'd pull a figure out of the air for no reason that anyone could really... It had nothing to do with what's gone on in the past. It had nothing to do with the amount of stuff we had to sell. It had nothing to do with anything other than somebody in their office decided we should chase this big target. And failed, obviously, because, how could you not? So there is something about this growth for growth's sake, stupid targets thing that goes on in businesses that makes the whole thing grossly unpleasant. It makes the whole thing grossly unpleasant. And I think it would be much better if businesses would just sit down and think about actually what do we need rather than what do we hope we could possibly steal from the market.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
As you say, it goes hand in hand then with the rest of the business. So you decide on what you need, say, revenue-wise as a business, which is correct. And maybe you aspire to be more because hopefully you do, because then you grow.
Yes.
But my point is, as yours is, you then have to have this joined effort where actually you speak to the people who are speaking to the customers. What is it they need? What is it they want? Are our products right? Are we serving the market correctly? All of these things become part of hitting a target, not just there's your figure, bang out as many calls as you can and you'll hit it.
Yes.
That's what repulses me about the whole management of sales, I think, and has been my experience, so.
Yes, and it's been my experience. And I don't know why this only occurred to me recently, but it did. I was doing a training, digital transformation in sales. Can you imagine? People want to digitally transform sales. That's the training that we did. It was good. It was good. But it only occurred to me then when I was with these hardcore telecoms team, proper hardcore telecom sales team, how ridiculous what it is we are expected to do in most situations. So what the role of the salesperson is to go out and convince somebody else, quite often a complete stranger, of something that this product's going to be great for them. And it's not even our idea of what's going to be great for them. Do you know what I mean? It's somebody else's. It's some geek who's sat in a product development team who's never spoken to a customer has decided, they should have this thing. And this is why salespeople then get perceived as being bullies or snakes or, all of these, because they have to be slimy and underhand to get the job done, because who's going to buy something they didn't ever want or ever need just because some product geek has decided this is the thing. Now, the issue is then between the product geek and us, the salespeople, are the marketing people who are supposed to understand the market, should be informing the product development, with sales support. But if they don't provide us with the leads, that's the work of salespeople, then the whole thing falls over. You've got me on one now.
Well, yeah, but it's true. And this is the thing. We're talking about something in isolation that actually isn't isolated. It's got to be part of the whole big picture of a business.
Yes.
So
it's like if you play Lionel Messi on his own, he's going to struggle. Do you know what I mean?
And that's such a good example.
Yeah. And if the defense and the midfield are passing him flat footballs, he's also going to struggle. Do you know what I mean? So that's the way I feel about it. It's the sales should be the strikers putting in the goals. They should be. But very often they're doing the work of marketing. They can't do the work of marketing. They haven't got the budget and the resources to do it. So they're knocking on doors one by one or phoning people one by one, doing a really poor job of marketing. It just seems to me like you could revolutionize, I think, 95% of the sales and marketing functions in the world in a minute and just say, no, this is what you're supposed to be doing. What you're doing, generating a shitload of shit leads, isn't helping anyone. What you're doing, bullying people into doing this, isn't helping anyone. What you're doing, imagining products from thin air, also isn't helping anyone. So you could revolutionize any sales and marketing department in a second. How have they possibly got it so wrong? I told you I'm a bag of issues, but this is it.
I think a part of it for me, if you look at the sales training market, is that they have one, two, maybe a couple more really core training companies who are still leading as global leaders. And they were set up in the 70s and 80s, and they're saying they're adapting to today, but they're not really, because they're still using that same process driven sales methodology. And unfortunately, because of their brands and their names and their reputations, and because they've been around for such a long time, some of the larger companies are still using them and they're still trusting them. And so it's almost this never ending cycle that needs to be broken by a little company like Live It, Love It, Sell It. It's going to be a bit of a tough nut to crack, that one, Martin.
It is going to be a tough nut to crack, but I trust you to do your very best.
I will. Absolutely. And you know what? I love every minute of what I'm doing. And that's the point, really, is that I'm loving what I do, which means that when I do my work, it's brilliant work to do, So.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I have faith in what you're doing. I have faith in what I'm doing. I have a mate who he's a mate because he trained me at some point in my career, and I've got some of his stuff that is really good. So I think there is a little bit of it going on. But the thing is, the little bit of it going on doesn't touch like the mythology of this killer salesperson who bullied this. Do you know what I mean? Like the Glengarry Glen Ross, or the Boiler Room, or these mythological types of salespeople who could sell ice to Eskimos. Like, why? That really doesn't work for me, because nobody's going to buy something they don't want to buy, and immediately they do, they're going to hate you. So what was the point of any of that?
The other thing we have to trust is the buyer, and that the buyers are getting smarter. The buyers are now king, as I always say, the buyer's king, because ultimately they are in control of this. And so I think we have to trust. It's almost like a revolution needs to happen where the buyers say, no, we're not going to buy any more from these people. We are going to look at it and choose what we want to choose and buy how we want to buy. And we're seeing that already. And what we then can do potentially is give the salespeople the skills in order to sell in that new way. Because I think it's already happening. I truly think it's already happening.
Yes.
So people are rebelling against the old pushy sales stuff. So
good. And I think they should. I mean, I think they always did. Do you know what I mean? That's why people don't like being sold to. It's because they're so, like, salespeople are so annoying. I say a different thing. I tell people that the customer is the most valuable asset they have in their business. That's what I tell them. And for all the reasons that you're talking about now, they are a few key presses away from finding a new supplier, What else did I want to say about that? I chatted to a guy called Mark Carter. He wrote a book called Add Value. And I'm reading it so I can review it here, but it's not quite the book I wanted. I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be about how salespeople could add value and how salespeople could be a valuable component of the product. Do you know what I mean? I tell salespeople, like, I want to be, when I'm selling, I want to be the buyer's mate who is an expert on supplying this thing. Do you know? That's my role. What was the point of that? The point of that is that a good salesperson does add that value.
Yeah.
But good salespeople are chased out of jobs, I think, because they aren't doing it the way the world expects them to do it.
Yeah, and again, who knows? Maybe sometimes there'll be a time when you actually can't get those good salesmen anymore because they've gone off and done something on their own or something. I don't know what the answer is to that one, but the way that we add value as salespeople is the way we add value as humans. And I know that might sound a bit cheesy, but ultimately, what's your value in a friendship group? What's your value in a community? What's your value as a parent or as a lover? I totally believe that's where you add value in sales. It's the same. It comes from the same place. You usually are, sharing the same values as the people you're speaking to. Ultimately, they're the best people to sell to because you get them. Because you're not
Yes.
going to sell to everyone. That's the other mistake we make in sales. That you can sell to every single person in the world. No, you can't. You just can't. That's not going to happen. My dad always said there's no such word as can't, but maybe on this one, I have to perhaps challenge my dad, bless him. But you're not going to sell to everyone. So it's about focusing on actually what's your role as an authentic human being in sales. Because if you get that right, then you start to really have some great success.
Yes. And the thing is, more than that, you don't want to sell to everyone
Yeah.
because some people are complete dicks and you don't want to have them in your life. You don't want to have them receiving your invoices. Do you know what I mean? You really don't. And this
Yeah.
is what I also say to people. So what happened is I did this training and then it was in Dubai, and then I went to see a friend in Abu Dhabi, and a friend of his was driving me back. He's got a sales job. He's selling investment properties in Dubai, and they haven't told him how to sell. So for like 45 minutes, I'm like, start the recording. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. And I did tell him everything he needed to know in about 32 and a half minutes. But I think, to your point, the most important thing is your job isn't to convince everyone to buy from you. That's stupid. You're never going to convince anyone to buy from you. Your job, first job, find the people who could buy from you. Do you know what I mean? Start there. Have they got the money? Have they got the commitment? Have they got the appetite? Are you making friends with them? These are so qualification, I think, is the job of salespeople. There's another sales trainer who I've been trying to get on here for 18 months, but he's too busy being successful. His thing is that
Well, that's
he
what
says,
he told you.
what's that?
Sorry. I said that's what he told you.
Well, maybe he hates me. I don't know. That's also fine. But his thing was, he says that the word, he's Australian, so I don't know how he could possibly know this, but he says the word sales originated from the word selja, which is a Norse word, which means to serve, which is brilliant. So there's at least 4 of us that I know of on the planet who are doing this in the right way.
Yeah, sure.
That should be the attitude. Like your dad, I'm sure, if a stranger walked into his shop, the first words out of his mouth would be, "How can I help you?" Do you know what I mean? Like the first words out of your mouth when you're managing your team, "I need you guys to help me." Do you know what I mean? Like when in the old days, before the internet, before LinkedIn, when you had to start with the receptionist, when I was selling advertising, I wonder if you could help me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is where the magic words.
But actually, can I just say genuinely, it's a magic word, not in a contrived way. It is genuinely a magic word to use in life. I know I keep coming back to this life stuff, but that's what I believe and teach. I think when you're sat in a room with salespeople because you've been appointed to do their training, the very first thing you should do is find out who you've got in the room with you and actually what makes them tick. And it's the same in every single step of life, everything, and especially in sales. I really believe in that.
Okay, so here's the issue with that is because I teach people like my made-up version of Ada. Now, in this training that I did 2 weeks ago, there was a telecom sales guy there, hardcore, been selling telecoms 22 years, never even heard of Ada, which blows my mind, blew his mind also when we got through it. But what was the point of that? The point was finding out about people, because I do it in all my trainings. I'm not going to start until I know exactly what they want. Do you know what I mean? Until they've actually committed, if you give us these things, it will be good. Because why would you take a chance? Why would you risk it? Why would you turn up with 5 days slides and just start at the first one and go to 500? And, why would you risk it? So there's that. But it's scary because especially if they're hardcore salespeople, they'll be like, well, you should know, and maybe they won't answer you. That's
they
the
do
fear.
Because of the way I position it in.
Yes.
Is that unless I know who I've got in the room, I'm not going to be able to give you value. And we go back to the value word, ultimately.
Yes.
And the other thing I think that I find really interesting is I meet so many people who say, I shouldn't really be in sales. I can't sell. I don't know why they've got me in this team, and they're probably their best salesperson
Yes.
because they're actually just selling in their normal, beautiful way, and it's
Yes.
successful.
Yes.
And yet the bosses come to me and say, I need you to help so-and-so with her confidence. I need you to help so-and-so with her this, that, and the other, or his this, that, and the other. And you think, and you can't see what a great salesperson they are. So you want to mold them into the
The
the kind
monster.
of the monster profile of a salesperson.
Yes.
Back to this same thing. I think again, it's stereotypical stuff. Really,
Yes.
is what it is. It's a shame.
Yeah. So the point I was making is not that they won't answer you, but that we think they won't answer, or they'll think we should know the answer, because everyone thinks we should know the answer. Like a salesperson should know everything. And I don't know why. I don't know, because salespeople pretend to know everything. I don't know why, because we're supposed to have product knowledge or something. I don't really know. But the fear is when you ask a question and it goes quiet. Do you know what I mean? You can't have it go quiet, because then you don't know what they're going to say. Maybe they're going to ask you something you don't know the answer to, or maybe they're going to, do you know what I mean? Or maybe the conversation is going to go in a direction that you didn't want it to go in. Or, yeah, I think that's the fear. That's why people aren't. So it's not even the case that people aren't listening. People don't know how to ask questions that actually, with answers that contain information. They don't know how to do that.
They also don't know how to handle a conversation when it goes off track, because
No.
we're trained in such a way that this is how the conversation will go. If it
Yeah.
doesn't go like that, this is going to be what they'll say. And so this is the answer if they say this.
Yes.
Really? Really? So I'm on a date with a new guy, and all of a sudden I've got this list in my pocket. I know exactly what questions he's going to ask me. I know what questions I'm going to ask him, and at the end of that date, we'll go and get married.
Yes.
No, 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 no. That's
No.
not how life is. And I don't want sales to be like that either. I want sales to be this amazing conversation that could go all sorts of places. Because
Yes.
imagine the opportunities we lose because we're on this little script and we can't veer away from it, and
Yes.
that's what we teach people when we teach them to sell.
100%. So I've got a definition from my I'm in the mood from selling thing, where I say that sales is making friends with people, helping them, making the most of leads, and something else. I can't remember what the other thing is. But if that is the job of sales, what is there to hate about that? What is there not to love about that? Like, if you are paid to go out and make friends with people, that I think is the job of sales. And making the most of leads is not bullying everyone who presents themselves to you into buying something. It's working out whether they can buy it, whether they're going to get value from it, all of those things, and then getting them to introduce you to their mates, like you say, them becoming your marketing team. Yeah. Because I just, like, all the time I was selling, I just wanted to be known as the guy who could really help you if you've got these problems. Do you know what I mean? So it should be more like problem solver. The other thing I say to people is the last thing you should put on your business card is sales, because you might as well just write, please hate me. If you put sales on your business card, it's ridiculous.
Well, there's a whole debate about this. It's funny because there was a lot of people when I started Live It, Love It, Sell It 5 years ago now. And when I started it and I started to sort of talk about sales and selling, I had a few people say to me, you shouldn't use those words, because when you use those words, people get a bit edgy and it puts a stigma on it,
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of me that says, but I don't want people to feel like that about the word sales. So there's almost this campaign in my mind where sales shouldn't be a feared and dirty word. I actually have a presentation that I do, which is when I speak, called Sales is Not Actually a Dirty Word,
Yes.
And there's a part of me that doesn't want to lose the word sales, because it shouldn't, people shouldn't feel that way about it, So it's an interesting conversation, that.
Yeah. Well, what do I think? I don't think it's the most accurate word. Like, very occasionally you make sales. And for some people, that's extraordinarily occasionally. Do you know what I mean? So to describe those people as salespeople is probably false advertising. But to describe anyone as sales, I mean, if you're an order taker and people are phoning up and buying stuff from you, okay, that's sales. But really what a salesperson is doing in most instances is some sort of customer liaison or some sort of customer qualification or some sort of customer support or buyer support. Do you know what I mean? That might be more accurate.
Or building a relationship, you know.
What's that?
Or building a relationship.
Building a relationship, yeah.
But another interesting thing is that my job title I decided would be Chief Inspiration Officer, because again, I wanted it to feel a bit different and I wanted it to be quite fun. You know, it's about personality. There's something I talk about a lot, Martin, because again, this whole 80s stuff, remember we would always say, well, you've got to know what your USP is, your unique selling proposition, you know, USP this, USP that, USP the other. And I came to the conclusion a couple of years ago that actually it's UHP, it's your unique human proposition. That's actually what's of much more value than your USP, because that's the bit that's about the people and the relationship and the communication piece, which is the bit we forget all the time. So I've created UHP on the journey.
Is that the bit that you've patented as well? Is it patented or?
Well, it's a trademark. Yeah, it's a trademark. So, but you know, it's important, and it forms the basis of a lot of the work I do with the corporates now. Is that, you know, if somebody wants to engage with me as a trainer or a consultant, I say to them, look, I'm going to be talking about your UHP stuff. That's what my focus is.
Yes.
And a lot of people now are starting to see, yeah, actually that's the missing bit. Yeah. That's the bit, the emotional glue that's missing in all of this, you know.
It's the only bit. Well, it's not the only bit. Like, you could also get your marketing team doing what they need to do and your product people getting to do them to do what they need to do. But it is the idiocy, I think, of sales. Is I was thinking, I had this manager once called Leon, tiny little guy, Leon, in South Africa. And he came to me one day and he said, how do you get these people to like you? Because I always feel that they don't like me. And I'm like, I couldn't give a shit if they like me or not. Do you know what I mean? I'm paid to make friends with these people. If they want to be my friend, then that's cool. I'm getting paid to do it. I've got 40, 50, 60 hours a week available. Do you know what I mean? And if they don't, then that's fine, because there's another 300 businesses I could be making friends with, you know? So I think there are people with the personality to do what we're talking about, which is to trade on your personality is what we're talking about, you know? In the most positive way, you know, I'm in the business of helping people like you. Do you want to be mates? You know, that's kind of my approach. What did I want to say about that? So I don't think it's available to everyone, but I do think it has to be more desirable for everyone. Do you know what I mean? That's okay. What do I think? I think the thing people are scared of is the failing at sales. And so 95% of people are failing at sales. And so it looks like a horrible way to make money. That's what I think. Doesn't end there, does it? Because then it gets worse. Because then we train people about objection handling.
Oh, God.
And then people will talk about the common objections, like it's too expensive, or the delivery times don't suit me, or it's the wrong color, or I'm not in the market for this right now. And when I look at these common objections, they just look to me to be like perfectly reasonable reasons why somebody wouldn't want to buy the thing. Do you know what I mean? Why do we have to beat those people down? Why do we have? Because then we get negotiation, and then we're looking for a win-win situation, which is impossible because winning is beating someone. So you can't both beat someone. How can that be desirable?
No. I think one of the biggest problems with, again, this is that training stuff, isn't it? This objection handling. It's like a module in training. When you said it, I went, oh, it's a module in training for sales.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest problems with objection handling is it usually occurs when the discovery part of the call hasn't been done properly,
100%.
or a lot of it does. because you haven't taken that time to really find out who's in front of you and what they need and when they want it and why they want it and the difference it's going to make to them. All of those lovely things are the basis of your discovery call. Now, when you've done all of that work properly, then very often you won't get objections, because objections come when someone hasn't totally connected and understood what it is you're trying to do together. That's the upshot of it all. So if someone then comes and says, look, I've listened to everything you've said, it's amazing, we've had this wonderful conversation, like one I've not had with many salespeople, right? You're winning already if they're saying stuff like that to you. But actually, I really want to have time to think about this. Okay. And that's something I hear a lot. Let them bloody think. Let them have that time, because if you've done all that stuff in discovery, then you should give them that time to go away. They need that time. And if you've done it right, they will be coming back with something for you. I truly believe that. And where I think the big work needs to be done is not in a module on objection handling, but in a module on discovery. And actually how we ask the great questions, as you said, Martin, how we start to really understand what it is our customer wants and what makes them tick, stepping into their world. A bit like Alice in the Looking Glass, when she went in through the looking glass and that world was pretty weird to her, wasn't it? That's sometimes your customer's world, and your job is to get in that world and understand it. And boy, it's exciting when you get in there. But you got to do it. You really have.
It really is exciting. You're 100% right. And this is what, whenever I've not done a huge amount of sales training. I've done my fair share, I would say, but more marketing probably. But whenever I've done sales training, the brief is always, these people can't close. And immediately you go in, the issue is they can't open. They've got absolutely no idea how to have a conversation with these people, to get them to like them, to get them to trust them, to get them to talk about the things that are important to them, to talk about. And then there's this whole idea of like, we have our sales process. And my reasoning has always been, it's much easier just to find out what their buying process is and sell it to them the way they want to buy it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it really frazzles my mind. But this is also an issue because, like, you hear it said a little bit, but your salespeople should really be the representatives of your customers in your business, because those are the people who are having those direct conversations with them. And especially if they've had some decent training and they're having decent conversations with them, they should be your customers' representatives in your business. And if you're a customer-centric business, which of course no business is really, they like to say they are, maybe Amazon is, then what? Then your customers aren't represented in your business, because marketing are more important, and delivery are more important, and production are more important, and accounts are more important. And then people don't seem to understand that if you don't have customers, you don't have a business. If you don't have salespeople, like some businesses don't need salespeople, but if you're a business that needs salespeople, you don't have a business if they're not being effective.
No, this goes back to teamwork, goes back to community, it goes back to all those, again, the human things that we did years and years, hundreds of years ago, and we were successful. We were very successful at sales hundreds and hundreds of years ago because we just worked together, and there wasn't this complication, and there wasn't these stigmas, and there wasn't the internet. So, it's interesting.
Yeah.
We learn a lot, I think, from what happened in times gone by. So.
I think the internet is an issue. But I think this attitude predates the internet. I think, look at Glengarry Glen Ross. When was that? Was that the back end of the 70s, mid 70s, early 80s maybe? I don't know. Just this idea that you should just go out and sell to people, like irrespective of whether they want it or otherwise. I just think it absolutely frazzles my mind. And it's such a joy when people say to you, like you said, I've not had this conversation with salespeople, It's like salespeople should be like the free assistant when it comes to resolving these annoying little problems that you have. Do you know what I mean? Like whatever it is you're buying, I don't know.
Yeah.
It frazzles my
Actually,
mind.
salespeople have a great opportunity, even still today, to stand out from the crowd massively by just doing it a little bit different. They really do.
See, I kind of think of myself as Toto out of The Wizard of Oz, because I think everyone's got it 100% backwards. So, like when Toto's pulling at the curtain and you just see it's the geezer turning the wheels that's doing all the smoke and the lights and all that stuff. Because I just think they've got it 100% wrong. Like, not only in marketing, and not only in sales, but also in marketing. I just feel like they've got it 100% wrong. I feel like we've been probably talking about this for the last 30 minutes. But question number 2 is, who do you work with? How do you add value to their lives?
Are we only on number 2?
We're only on number 2, but 3, 4, and 5 are quick typically.
I work with individual entrepreneurs who have their own little businesses, because I like that space very much, because those are the guys who are completely petrified about sales. So I do a lot of great work in that space. I also work with sales teams, and I tend to work with sales teams within more SME market than the big corporates, mainly because, if I'm really honest, I'm not sure if I need to work with the sales team in a corporate or actually the whole sales leaders piece, because I think it comes more from the top in those organizations. I think they need educating more before we even start with their people. So I tend to I would get involved if someone came and said, Jules, can you do this? But I don't really pitch myself out for that sort of business, if I'm honest. But the SME market's wonderful, because if I can get a hold of a team that's, maybe 8 people, 14 people, I've done a team of 25 before. It's great. It's great work, because I can get close enough to really be part of that team and also start to really make a difference to them. So I love that space. Sector-wise, it doesn't matter, because I've been in a lot of different sectors. So I can train and coach a team that in a sector I've never worked in my opinion, because the subject matter is the niche. And that is me giving them the methodology of live it, love it, sell it, because it's different, and the UHP stuff. So that's really where I'm working right now.
Fantastic. And this is training and consultancy, and what does the delivery actually look like?
So consultancy wise, I tend to work with, say, a CEO in an SME. And so I'm coaching individually with them, but on strategy levels. And then I'll be coaching their teams on the day-to-day sales strategy. So looking at their pipelines, opportunities, and that type of pocket of sales. And then with the entrepreneurs, well, they're just beautifully unique, because they could be a photographer, they could be somebody who's making crafting things, they could be somebody who sells on a multi-level marketing product even, because they just don't like selling. And so when they found me, they're like, oh, it's a breath of fresh air. Suddenly someone's telling me I actually can sell, and they're giving me this very natural ability to see it in a different way. That's where I work with the entrepreneurial side of things. So
I love that. I really do love that, because you need sales, or else you're not in business, and it's like,
isn't it?
Yeah. Frazzles my mind. So there was I had a question then that came up. The problem with these corporations is that it is entrenched. This idea, you have to do your number by this day, and that I think is what makes, I think there's a number of things, but that's what makes sales difficult. Here's the question I have for you. Like, we know that being a really good salesperson probably can make the best of a really bad situation, but they'd still have to be lucky. They'd still have to be able to come back in the business and be able to say to the business, they don't need it quite like this, they need it a little bit like that. And do you know what I mean? So maybe a really good, but then you come back and you pitch the business, I suppose. So maybe a really good person can make the best of a really bad situation. But do you ever get yourself to the point, or have you ever been in a situation where you've had to say to a business, look, your product's wrong, these people don't stand a chance, or your marketing's not working right, these people don't stand a chance? Have you ever had the space to do that and felt the need to do that, I wonder?
So there's an answer that comes from me working in a business where I did it. So actually I was employed by them. and they hunted me to go and work in the business. And then when I went into the business, I made a couple of really big suggestions to help them in terms of their sales process, actually. I don't really like the word process, but what they were doing, I looked at it and I said, guys, you can do this different. So they were doing a 45-minute to an hour demonstration up front on a sales call. Okay. I mean, this is logical to you and I probably because we're experienced in sales, but that was the first thing they were doing. So the whole
100%. What every customer wants is to be spoken at for 45 to 60 minutes at the very beginning of a relationship. That's what they want.
So the first call in as a cold call was, can I book in a demo? Basically, that was the ultimate outcome of that first call. Can I book in a demo? We've got a great product. We know you do what we want you to do, and it's going to take 45 minutes to an hour. That's the first thing. So immediately their success rate of appointment booking wasn't that great. I wonder why. The second thing then, when they did that demo and talked at them, as you say, for 45 minutes to an hour, they then expected to book a second call to then do the sales pitch. All right. So, and listen, to me and you, I suspect, and I'm making an assumption, Martin, but I'm thinking you're thinking the same as me. What? Really? Are you serious that that's what they were doing? Yes, they were doing that. And sadly, on the back of it, they were getting sales, which is the bummer, because this is where they turn around and say, well, it's worked with this, 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 and this. So they have this case in point to say, well, it's worked. But what they don't realise is how much better it could work if they changed it and done it differently. So I obviously suggested that they did it in a different way. And they certainly did a really great discovery type of conversation in order to then see what that customer actually wanted to see in the demo, because the demo doesn't have to be 45 minutes to an hour. It might only be 20 minutes, and they'd buy it and they'd snap your hand off because it was solving one part of that problem that they really needed to solve. So instead, they would show them every element of the platform. Can you imagine? That's why they call it death by PowerPoint.
Yes.
So I suggested my suggestions to these guys. I worked with them for about 10 months, I think it was. And they just couldn't bring themselves to change. And it was all coming from the top, obviously, but they just couldn't change. And this is back to what we said earlier. It was safe to do it the way they'd done it. They'd seen an element of success. They wanted to make sure the customer saw every bit of the platform just in case they wanted to buy another bit that they didn't realize they wanted. And so all of the skill of sales is out the window. And I gave them my notice and I left because I couldn't make a difference. I just couldn't make a difference, which was sad. But I can't just stay and try and keep making a difference when I couldn't. So I changed what I was doing. And then in my own business, when I look at my customers I work with, I guess part of my discovery piece of sales is really looking at, are we aligned? Can I really make a difference? And luckily, I haven't had to leave any of my customers in the last 5 years. So, which I'm pretty proud of.
That's good. The thing is, I am shaking my head, but I'm not at all surprised. I've seen this over and over and over again. And the thing is, you might get lucky. Do you know what I mean? Maybe your product's great. Maybe your targeting's great. Maybe you're actually getting people on the phone by some miracle who are going to have a need for this product or service. So maybe so I'm not surprised that it goes on. I'm not even surprised that they get sales. Mm-hmm. The major issue with sales, whether you do it well, especially if you want to do it the right way, like you and I want to do it, the effective way, the good way, the fun way, the successful way, this way, is that businesses are incapable very often. Management are incapable of taking any feedback whatsoever. And so that kind of feedback is just dismissed as an excuse because you're not able to do this ridiculously difficult thing, which is convince someone of something you're not even convinced of. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like that for me is impossible. So that is where like the circle closes and you come to what I call in another one of my presentations, the most powerful close in the world, which is no. Do you know what? I don't want to sell it to you. I'm not going to do
Yeah.
it. You're not doing what I need you to do, so I'm going to get on with my life. Do you know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
is also what salespeople are scared of.
Yeah, this is very important in the entrepreneurial space when you've got your own businesses and you're, say, one-man band type of business. This is massively important that you understand how you can say no to business, because what we tend to do is we'll just say yes to everything because we need the money. And I've done it myself, and I have done it myself. I've definitely, in the very early days of my business, I didn't say no to a customer because I just took a contract that was not what I set my business up to do, but something I could do. For
Yes.
example, slightly different scenario, but I was giving services that I didn't intend to provide in my business. I was actually doing a telesales contract for a customer in my year one, which was like, it blew my mind. I thought, why the hell have I done this? This is awful. I hate telesales. But I did it because I could do it. It was easy, and I got great success by doing it for the customer. But I hated every minute of doing it, and I think these are all the things you have to weigh up. It's not just sort of, do you want to work with that customer? It's also, what is it that you're providing as a business? So in an entrepreneurial space, you've got to really decide, what is it that you do? What is your
Yes.
value ladder of products that you provide? And you've got to stick to that and say, this is why I'm bringing you. This is the exciting value ladder I have, rather than go, yeah, I probably can do that. I reckon I did that a couple of times. Yeah, go on then. I can do. And I see it. I see it a lot in that entrepreneurial space, because we need to get the money and we need to earn
Yeah.
some money. So,
Well,
yeah.
you got off lightly because I ran my business, like my agency, properly for about 9 years. And for the first 6 years, I don't know why, I'd convinced myself that I wanted to be the small businesses marketing champion. And it took me 6 years to work out that they don't deserve one at all. Do you know what I mean? It's like, they don't have the money, they don't have the understanding, they don't have and they're too often in a bad mood. And the marketing people are the people who get it. So it took me 6 years to work out. 100%. The major questions are, can they buy from you? Are they going to get value from it? Do you want to be providing it to them? And the thing is, this goes, I think, to the root of all of this, is that businesses don't believe that they're actually delivering value. They don't believe that. So they think if somebody is lucky enough to buy it, or if they are lucky enough that somebody buys it, well, those people have the secret to your actual, not your unique selling point, but your value proposition, which is, what is it that's valuable about what you're doing? So people just don't believe that they're delivering value in the world. And so they don't put themselves in the game. And so, business just becomes much more unpleasant and stressful than it needs to be. And I've got a real issue with salespeople hiding and pipelines. So salespeople honestly think that just because they haven't said no yet, there's a chance that they might still say yes. And so they don't ever give them the opportunity to say no. So then they've got this £1.5 million pipeline bullshit going on, which isn't going to do anyone any good. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
I could talk about this for a month. I really could.
There's a lot to chew with this, isn't there? That's the point. There's a lot to chew over, and I work with pipeline with my SME type customers. I do a lot of work with the pipeline stuff, because it's also the pipeline is the secret to then how you actually create your conversations with your customers. It's all connected. Some people see a pipeline as, oh, you've already had the conversation, then it goes in the pipeline. But for me, actually, they're still intrinsically connected, and it's still a continuation of a conversation. And that's how some people don't see it.
Yeah, and businesses get this thing, like they've got, I don't know, can they borrow money against their pipeline? I don't know. But people have got this thing, like if a salesperson's growing their pipeline, then they are going to be successful. Because if they haven't said no yet, then there's always a chance that they might say yes. And so maybe 20% of the pipeline says yes. Well, why not just work out who is possibly ever going to say yes or not? Cut them out. This is literally it. This is the other part of my definition, is it's motivating people to do something slightly different. Because either you're going to motivate them to fix the issue with you, or to fix the issue with someone else, or to realize that the issue isn't as big an issue as they thought, or whatever, So, yeah, I honestly think sales in the right situation is the best job in the world. Really, the perfect situation would be great product, great marketing, great sales. That would be the perfect. But even you can go some way away from that and it still be a really, really good job. I mean, you could be cleaning storm drains, for example, So that's kind of how I feel about it. Okay, good. We've got to question number 3. Question number 3 is short because we're going to put this on TikTok. Okay, so it's for people with very short attention spans.
I'm a bit blurred. I don't know if
I'm a little bit blurred.
I think it's
don't
connection.
Know why that is. It's a bit annoying that this is the TikTok bit. It comes and goes a little bit. Right, let's just do it. We'll do it with audio. We'll put a dancing person in front of you. Say something rhythmic. Say something rappy, and we'll put a dancer in front of you for TikTok. Okay, so the question is, what is your recommendation for anyone who is looking to get better at sales?
Okay. I'm going to do live it, love it, sell it, as in the methodology. So the live it part is understand exactly who you are and exactly why you do what you do and why you love what you do. The love it is understand the customer, understand exactly what they want, make sure they're aligned with you. And the sell it is go out, be authentic, use your UHP and be visible.
Fantastic. Be physical. Was that the last bit?
Visible.
Okay, good. Excellent. Cool. I think that will work on TikTok. We will get someone, maybe we'll get someone to make a song. Live it, love it, sell it.
Go for it.
I've got a musical marketing person coming up. I haven't pushed him very hard, but I'm hoping when we make friends, he might make a theme tune for the podcast. That'd be good.
Oh, well, my son's a music producer, so you give us a shout if you need anything like that.
Oh, okay. And I haven't got budget.
You don't need budget. Not really.
Good. Okay, cool. So that takes us then to question number 4. Question number 4 is, what should people read? You've written a book, but I couldn't actually find what it was called. That's why it didn't appear in your introduction. It's called Live It, Love It, Sell It, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We can't see it there, but it is called Live It, Love It, Sell It. And my camera's so rubbish you can't see it at all. But okay. The book's Live It, Love It, Sell It. And it actually says how to win at sales with the art of human conversation, because it's obviously all about what I've just described in terms of the sales road trip, as I call it. So, this book's about you discovering your life skills and who you are as an individual and using that when you're selling. And then all the connection to customers that we've talked about a lot on this podcast. And then the visibility piece is, I think, how you're going to show up online, for instance, and how you're going to show up at networking and how you're going to show up wherever you show up, and that it's consistent and that it's authentic, because there's so many people now saying this, that, and the other in their visibility, which isn't who they are, because they've been coached to say it or they're told that's what you need to say. And, storytelling is one of the best ways you can show up, in my mind. Authentic stories, sharing experiences, and just being you. That's how I've done it for 5 years, and it's been all right doing it that way.
Good. Much better than the other way. The thing is, the thing is, like lying, why would you lie? Why would you start out like a business relationship lying?
I'll tell you why you lie. Because especially in the corporate space, you lie because you need to hit a target. And if you don't lie, you won't hit your target.
Yes. Okay.
Not that I lie, because my mum told me I should never lie. So I never went down that road. So
no.
That's why it happens. It's pressure that causes these salespeople to lie.
It is pressure. It is pressure that causes salespeople to be all of the things, the bullies, the snakes, all of that stuff. It comes from this ridiculous pressure, because they're in a ridiculous position, I think, like 95% of the time. I do think that.
Yeah, I agree.
It reminds me when I was working on the telephone selling, this is what I wanted to say about Mark Carter, because Mark Carter wrote this book, Add Value. It is a really cool book, but it's not the book I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be about how a salesperson could add a significant amount of value in a sales relationship, but it's not about that. But it's still useful because he comes up with these 5 aspects of value, and one of them is relationships. And it's only when I read that I just realized that I've always been a relationship seller. You know, I phone up and I make friends with people, and my customers, the best customers in my life, have always become really good friends. You know, and that for me probably dovetails in beautifully with what you're saying, like my perception of what he was going to say, but he didn't say. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, like that, like adding relationship. Like really all a salesperson should be doing is turning up in people's prospective customers, potential customers' lives and saying, look, I might be able to help you with these issues that you're having. You know, it should be as easy as that. It really should. Yeah. Okay, good. Are you going to recommend some reading by anyone else, or just your
No,
book?
Listen, I've definitely read other books, but I'm not a massive reader. I probably do more podcast listening and stuff like that, really. And I love, funnily enough, Stephen Bartlett, we talked about earlier. He does a super podcast, so I would tend to listen to that. And then there are other books I've read, but I would probably have to just send them to you in a list because I can't always recall. It's my age, Martin. I can't always recall the name of some of these books, but because I'm not a massive reader, but when I have read a book, it's a big thing, you know, because
yes,
I've read it because it was good, if that makes sense, because I can quit quite easily on a book. So, so I don't want it to be all about my book. I'd love people to see and maybe read it and it would help them. But this isn't about promoting a book. You don't make any money on books anyway. It's a big myth. But it's nice to have it as a backup of like who you are and what you're trying to the message you're trying to get out to the world. So it's great to have a book for sure. So.
We write books for credibility. You make money off your book, of course you do.
I don't make a lot.
Personal
honestly,
brand.
It's a big myth what you make of the book, because by the time Amazon's taken what they want, it's pennies. Seriously, it's pennies.
But that's not the value of a book, is it? The value of the book is that you are an author.
Yes, and also the value of the book is when people actually come to you to do business with you because of the book. Yes. And equally, you can give a book a discovery call for them to take away when they're making their decision. You know, these are definitely values of having a book. Of course they are. But if people think you make physical money just from a book in terms of the sales of the book, then don't think of it that way. That's all I mean.
I interviewed a guy. He offers as a service to become a New York Times bestseller. Like he offers this as a service, like you write the book and he makes it a New York Times bestseller. Great business, I think. What was the other thing I want to say? Yeah, I've adapted the question, so it can also be content that people should consume. So Steve Bartlett, what is his podcast called? Do you know?
I can't remember what it's actually called, which is terrible, I know, but I just have... somebody would have put it on social media and said, this is a really great episode. I would have tuned in and then I will have saved it to my Spotify. So see how honest I am about the way I work with things.
Yeah, but you might be too honest.
But no, but this is a lesson in point, I think, about human behavior, because, you know, you need to remember this stuff. When someone recommends something, they might listen to one episode of it, like your podcast, Martin, and that may lead to them saying, I liked that. I'll follow it, I'll subscribe, and then all of a sudden you've got a new follower. So there's lots of ways we can cut this stuff. So that's definitely what I enjoyed. And then
Okay, good. Can I just interject for a second? Steve Bartlett's podcast is The Diary of a CEO. It might be the most popular, successful podcast in the UK right now.
Yeah, but probably because he's a dragon, to be fair, it would have helped. Actually, it's a good podcast. It's a good podcast.
It is good. I've seen a couple of episodes.
Very real. He's very real and he's honest, and he's got that UHP that I quite like, I think, to be honest. And by the way, we've all got a UHP, you know. There are 7 million types of normal in the world. That was a Bupa campaign, which I thought was rather good.
Excellent. Good. Okay, cool. So now I just need to check in with you and see how you have, and I'm taking a risk here because we all know how honest you are at this point, how you have enjoyed your experience of appearing on my little podcast.
It's been very, very nice, Martin. I actually, no, it's better than nice. My English teacher, who I really didn't like at school, used to say, used to rap your knuckles if you used the word nice, because it was just a very nothing type of word. It's
Bland.
been great. And I like that we talked about sales the way we did. I like that you steer the podcast the way you do, because it doesn't feel like you have a list of questions. And some podcasts feel like it's very scripted, which is fine, because I understand why they want to do that. But I like the podcasts that just sort of take you all over the place and give a little bit of extra value, personally.
Excellent. And this is why, because like you say, did you say it? I've done 2 of these today is the problem. So I'm a little bit mashed now. We have our pitch, because we're in sales and marketing, we have our pitch. And I think the reason that I like to do this a little bit longer is so that we just get a little bit below the veneer. Do you know what I mean? I like to challenge a little bit, and I'm properly nosy. And we both know you need some structure to your conversation, but it can't sound like an inquisition. It can't. So that's good.
No.
The reason I'm checking in, of course, is because now I'm going to ask you to throw a couple of people under the bus who you think might enjoy or endure to be a part of this little thing.
You're also going to try and close me to give you those names here live on the podcast, aren't you?
No, that's like my pen's here right now. Who can you recommend?
Exactly.
But what's nice is if you can give a little pitch, because then I can put it in their introduction and stuff.
Well, there's one guy that I think would be fascinating on your podcast, but again, who knows? But he's called Angus Grady, and I have met him on LinkedIn, and he's very Marmite, and he won't care that I told you that. And I meet him, we have tea and cake. But he is very old school in terms of sales is about exactly what we think, by the way, people. But he uses great things like postcards, and he handwrites postcards to people, and he calls people on the telephone, and he leaves voice messages. So he's all about this human connection stuff rather than it being automated and digital,
Yes.
And it's quite fascinating. And, an older school type of guy who just gets it. So I think he would be quite fascinating to talk to on your podcast, and I'm sure he'd enjoy doing it. And then I'd need to have a think about someone else for you, because I want to just try and think who would bring real value to you. And there's a few in my mind, so I'll probably come back to you with another name. But Angus, I'm happy to just name on here, because I think he would be super fun for you to have on your podcast.
And might you, not quite in the way that Gillian did for us, where she sent you a little video, but if you could put together some kind of LinkedIn introduction, that would be really useful. And then we will pick the ball up from there.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, expect it to be a voice note type of thing with Angus, because he likes to.
I find that weird, though. Don't you find that weird?
No, I love it.
I love it.
That's why I think you would. Yeah, I think you would have a good conversation with him, because I think maybe you would challenge each other on a few things, and therefore I think it would be a great combo.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's where it gets interesting, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So do you want the really good news?
Go on.
We made it to the end.
We did. And how about me ask you a question? Because that's like not so traditional.
That's not so traditional, no.
How did I fare as a guest on your podcast, Martin, today?
Well, are we being honest still?
Yeah, absolutely, always.
The thing is, immediately I started reading your stuff and reading about you. I just thought, I'm going to love this conversation because I don't buy the whole USP thing, but the UHP thing is wonderful. Because this is where I've got to with the idea of sales, is that if you're going to be successful in sales, I think about it slightly differently, but you're essentially trading off your personality, in the way that I always did without realizing it until I read Mark's book. So to be honest, to be fair, you had a massive head start because you're thinking the right way before we even started having a conversation. And the reason that I'm so delighted to have this conversation is because you're rare. People aren't thinking about this in the right way. Like, the whole of industry seems to have this smash and grab attitude, because they don't believe they're delivering value, because, so it has been hugely refreshing and fun to speak to you today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and you, Martin. Thanks for having me as a guest.
You're very welcome. Thank you for taking the time to check out this episode of the Talk Marketing series. If you found this interesting and useful, you can check out the Talk Marketing playlist here, and this is something that YouTube thinks you might find useful. And if you haven't yet, please take a second to like, share, subscribe, and comment, because that will give us the motivation to continue on this epic journey.